Simply Cooking by MmmChef is brought to you in part by Findlay Foods, offering wholesale food distribution services in Ottawa, Kingston, and all points between since 1986.
Hello. Today I am doing one of my favorite party spreads. I am doing a build your own taco bar fiesta. Everything I'm making today is Mexican inspired, as most of the cuisines that I make that aren't Italian, they're mostly inspired by me. And this is definitely one of the most popular spreads that I do for showers or bachelor/bachelorettes or backyard barbecue. You can do the meats on the barbecue, you can do the veggies on the barbecue, or even just a party, dinner party. I do a build your own Mexican taco bowl or whatever you want to call it, probably at least 6 or 7 times a year. It's probably one of my most popular themed dinner parties. So I'm going to show you a whole bunch of different pieces. You can make some of them or you can make all of them to make kind of like a spread buffet for feeding a group of people a fun, delicious, flavorful meal. I have some ground chicken that I've already sauteed in my cast iron skillet. To this pan, I've added chili and cumin, garlic, salt, pepper, and actually some of this sauce right here. This is a chipotle in adobo. These are chipotle peppers that have been stewed in an adobo sauce. And this type of stuff is available at the grocery store in your Mexican section, usually in little small cans. I have a few of those items today. So this one is the chipotle and adobo. It's a little bit spicy, and I added half of the can to this meat and the other half in here to use as garnish when we build our tacos later. I've got some bell pepper that I've cut up on my sheet pan that I've lined with parchment. My oven is set at 425. And I'm going to be coating my peppers with some olive oil. And a nice helping of salt. I'll get these coated. These I like to call my fajita onion and peppers. There's something that I make for fajitas or tacos or when I'm making a Mexi bowl. I like to roast them in the oven, but if you were doing this all on the barbecue, you could actually leave the peppers whole, roast them on the barbecue, and then chop them up after they're cooked. Those are probably gonna take about 16 to 18 minutes in my oven, and on the break later, halfway through, I will give them a toss so that I can flip them over and they cook evenly. Listen to that sizzle. I'm gonna turn this off and pour it into my bowl for service. One wonderful thing about a taco spread or a Mexican spread is that, of course, it's delicious when it's nice and hot and fresh. But guess what? It's also delicious cold. This is one of those spreads that you can leave out for quite some time and not worry about it coming to room temperature, because room temperature or cold tacos are just as delicious as hot tacos. I'm gonna put my meat here for a little bit later. So I have some ground chicken and I have some black beans for the veggie people, which I'm gonna show you a little bit later. Most Mexican meals have some sort of grain besides their tortilla. So usually it's a corn or it's a rice, but today I've decided to use quinoa. I've pre-cooked this quinoa, but you could use rice, you could use millet, you could use buckwheat, you could use really any type of grain that you have on hand. I really like to use quinoa because it has a lot more protein than a white rice. And then if you have any other vegetarians who are at your party, then they can have the quinoa, which will give them some protein. To this quinoa, I'm going to be adding about a cup of frozen corn. If corn is in season and it's that time of year, please use a real ear of corn. You can grill that ear on the barbecue, which you've seen me do in my grilling episodes. And I also like to squeeze in half of a lime. And this is like a lime cilantro corn quinoa instead of a lime cilantro corn rice, which is something that you may have seen before. Gonna rip off some fresh cilantro. Oop, my pineapple fell over. Now you know where it is. I'm gonna chop up this cilantro and get this in my quinoa. Another thing that I'm doing is fresh guacamole. But today when I was shopping for this party, I couldn't find any avocados that were perfectly ripe. And that is something that happens to me actually quite often because I shop on my way over to the client's house to prepare the food for their party. And sometimes I don't have the time to go to 3, 4, 5 different grocery stores to look for a ripe avocado. So I'm gonna show you a great trick to make an avocado crema instead of an avocado guacamole in your blender. And then this way it doesn't matter if you have tough avocados or soft avocados. Let me place this here. So these are the 3 avocados that I was able to buy today. They're not totally hard. They have a little bit of give, but they're still not soft enough to mush up into guacamole. You all know I love my high-powered blender. So I'm going to be using my high-powered blender for this crema, but you can use a food processor or just your regular blender or a jar with one of those immersion handheld blenders. They're not too hard. They're soft enough for me to still open. If the avocados that you purchased are still too hard for you to open or scoop out, you can actually take a potato peeler and you can peel the outside of the avocado in the same way that you would do a hard mango. Let's see if I can get these pits out. I can. They're not too hard. See, that one was a little bit too hard. Let's see if I cut these in quarters, if I can get it to peel. I can. You could chop this and make it into a guacamole, but in my opinion, do you see that this avocado is just a little bit too hard for that? So this is when I'm going to blend. I need some assistance from my knife to get this skin off because this avocado is not as ripe as I'd like it to be. I have half of a red onion. I use the other half in my pineapple salsa. I'm not making the pineapple salsa in front of you today because that's something that I made in season 1 of my show. So if you want to see how to make that, you can check out the Mexican 1 for Dinner 2, 3 from season 1 where I make a Mexican steak bowl using my pineapple salsa. But if you want to do the same recipe as my pineapple salsa, but use tomatoes instead, or mango, you can have a really delicious salsa. Another way to get your avocados in without finding avocados that are in season or that are perfectly ripe is now you can actually buy frozen avocado chunks at some grocery stores. So that's a great alternative to use, especially for this blended crema, because it doesn't matter exactly how perfect your avocados are as we're going to be blending them into a smooth sauce. So instead of using sour cream today, because most of the people at this party happen to be dairy-free, I will have some cheese shreds on the spread, but instead of using sour cream or cream inside the crema, this is going to be a dairy-free one, and this will still give you the same mouthfeel as a sour cream-based one. So I've got my 3 avocados all cleaned up in my blender with that half of a onion. Now I'm going to peel these garlic cloves real quick. My hands are just dirtier than I wanted them to be, so bear with me, please, while I give them a good wipe. I would like to use all 3 of these garlic cloves because just like in Italian cuisine, there's never too much garlic. Along with the garlic, I'm going to add a really nice glug of olive oil, a really nice generous pinch of salt, the juice of a lime, and on the break, I'm gonna give this a blend because it's really loud, and I'm gonna take my bell peppers out of the oven, and we'll see you then.
This program is brought to you in part by Findlay Foods, providing wholesale food distribution services including gluten-free, halal, kosher, and many other products in the Ottawa and Kingston areas.
I have blended my avocado crema. It is so nice and smooth. I'm gonna get this in a bowl to go onto my bar. My bell peppers are in the oven behind me. I can smell them. Something I like to do right at the end of cooking the bell peppers is turn the broil on for about 30 seconds, which I've already done. And that will give me that, you know, seared skillet Mexican real bell pepper, you know, consistency that you've probably had at a Mexican restaurant before. Let me grab them. Ooh, look at that. They look fantastic. They've got beautiful caramelization all around the edges. They softened up really nicely. So I'm going to get these into my bowl. I've used mild bell peppers for this because I've got a group of people coming that I don't know very well, so I don't know if they like spicy or not. But you could do these with whatever peppers you prefer, and if you and your family, excusez-moi, like a lot of spice, you could definitely use some spicy bell peppers in there. I have my cast iron skillet that I've cleaned out and given a good wipe. I'm going to turn this on to medium high. And in this cast iron, I'm gonna make my black bean filling. So my bowl here is just 2 cans of black beans that I've drained and rinsed. And now I'm going to add some flavor to it so that the people who don't eat the chicken can use the black beans instead. A nice drizzle of olive oil while we let our pan get hot. I'm just gonna turn it up a little bit while it comes to temperature, and then I'll turn it back down. Awesome. I have some red onion here. I'm going to use all of it. I've got some poblano. No, this is not a poblano. What is it called? It's on the tip of my tongue. This is a cubanelle pepper, which has a tiny little bit of spice to it, but it's pretty mild. It's not as mild as a bell pepper, but it's certainly not as spicy as a jalapeno. It actually has a nice little sweetness, but a lot of flavor, which I really like. I can hear my onion sizzling already. Get that in the pan. So remember earlier I was talking about all the little sauces and cans that you can buy in your local Mexican section? And I showed you the chipotle and adobo that I used in my chicken mixture. Well, I have a couple more of those items that I'm going to be using in my black bean mixture. So along with buying the chipotle and adobo, which is the dark red sauce you see there, you can also buy something called a green salsa, which is also known as a tomatillo salsa. It happens to be my favorite of all the Mexi salsas. It's a medium to hot spice, not mild, but not super spicy. And it's made with tomatillos, which are kind of like a green tomato, but instead of looking like a tomato, they actually have a very thin layer of skin on the outside. That's this green sauce right here. It's basically tomatillos that have been charred and then blended in a blender with a little bit of garlic and probably some lime juice. Oh, that's a nice sizzle. Now I'm going to add my black beans. Oh yeah. And my tomatillo salsa. Oh yeah. I'm not necessarily looking to do a lot of cooking here. I'm just looking to heat it up and get all of my flavors together. These were black beans that came in a can, and they were salt-free, and I rinsed them. So I definitely want to add just a little bit of salt to this. Awesome. I have my cooked chicken, my quinoa with cilantro, lime, and corn, my grilled peppers and onions, my pineapple salsa, my guacamole / avocado crema. It's all of the ingredients that you would find in a guacamole, but it's blended. Then I have that chipotle and adobo sauce, some pickled jalapeno, some traditional pico, some traditional salsa, which is stewed tomatoes. And then after I get this all together, I'm going to show you a pico, which is basically kind of like my pineapple salsa, but with a tomato base instead of the pineapple. Look at that sizzle. I wish you could smell the tomatillo salsa, the garlic, the jalapeno, the lime, and the cilantro. It smells fantastic. Okay, let me turn this off. Not too hot. Pour this into my bowl. Cast irons are always so heavy, and I often have a hard time because my arm strength. There we go. So I have my beautiful black bean filling. I'm going to get my cast iron cleaned up, get my board cleaned up, and when we come back from the break, I'm going to make a tomato-based salsa, and I have these great corn tortillas that come from Mexico that have been made with masa, which is a ground corn, and I'm going to sear them in my clean cast iron to get that nice little grill on the outside of the tortillas. And then we're going to assemble everything and eat our Mexican fiesta. We will see you after the break.
Be sure to follow Daniela on Instagram at MmmChef for all the latest posts, including behind-the-scenes looks of the Simply Cooking set and some delicious culinary creations that will definitely make you hungry. After all, we do eat with our eyes.
All right, I'm gonna get this pan on to a medium heat. I'm going to be searing my soft corn tortillas on each side in the pan. And while I do that, I'm gonna show you how I make my tomato pico, which again is like my pineapple one, but instead of pineapple, I use tomatoes. I'm gonna keep an eye on my pan so that it can get nice and hot. And I actually don't have a bowl for my salsa, so I just grabbed it. There we go. Okay. There's some tortilla chips in there, but that's okay. So I can hear my fat starting to sizzle. So it's about to come up to temperature. These little tortillas take about, 30 to 45 seconds per side. So I'm going to be able to do quite a few while I do my salsa. So let's hope this red onion isn't too strong and I don't cry on camera as I've done a few times before. I'm only going to use half the onion because we have lots of red onion in other stuff and I want to taste the flavor of the tomato. So now that that's nice and hot, let me turn it down to a medium low, and this way it will stop smoking for me. And as soon as it stops smoking, I'm gonna add one of my little tortillas. So I'm dicing my red onion really fine. Putting that in the bottom of my bowl. Let me get that up here so you guys can see it better. That's a nice heat. So I'm gonna put my tortilla down there. And I like to push it down because it will pop up a little bit and I wanna get those nice little brown, circle marks on my tortilla. I do this stuff almost every day, all the time. So the tips of my fingers are, pretty strong and I can grab this from the pan. But if you haven't done this before, I might suggest that you use a pair of tongs. I'm going to clean out the centers of my tomatoes. I've already given these a good wash before you guys got here. Take out the tops and slice them up and turning them into a dice. I grew up around Mexican food and Italian food. These are the two cuisines that I probably have the most experience in. Obviously, I am Italian and grew up in an Italian household, but my mom worked at a Mexican-inspired restaurant for like 20-something years, and so my laundry room always smelled like fajitas. And it's something that I grew up eating. My mom would often bring home the pieces to make quesadillas at home. So she would bring home the refried beans, the fresh tortillas, and all that stuff. And then my first real job was at that Mexican-inspired restaurant, and I was called a tortilla girl. So I was in the kitchen making the masa and the tortilla dough from scratch, and then I would portion it out into hundreds of little balls, and then I would stand in front of this really cool tortilla machine that had a conveyor belt, and I would pop the little balls of tortilla dough into the top of the machine, and it would flatten it itself and then go around the conveyor belt, and as it came down to the bottom of the conveyor belt, the tortillas would puff up and be fresh for the customers' fajitas. So that was my first job with my mom at a Mexi restaurant. Before I went to culinary school, I was working in a kitchen of a Mexican place making fresh tortillas. All right, I've got my one, look at that. It's got a little bit of brown on it. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Get my next one in the pan. I think I'm gonna turn this up one. Perfect. My next tomato. Get this all chopped up. Oh, I can start to smell that corn in that tortilla. It's starting to smell like Mexico. I have been really fortunate enough to get to visit Mexico and visit what I would say was the most authentic experience I could have had. Of course, I went to a resort with some friends, and then after the resort, a girlfriend and I went to a place called E04, which is a small little island off the coast of Cancun, and you have to take a boat to get there. So we lugged all of our luggage to this pier, and we waited and we got on this boat with all of our luggage, and it took us across to this cute little island called E04, which is Island of Women is what it translates to. And this town is just so colorful, and so many fresh little taco spots and local Mexican ladies, you know, feeding you fresh salsa. And you know what they had there? They had frozen pieces of fruit on a stick. So instead of a popsicle, they actually had like a slice of pineapple or a slice of watermelon that they put on a stick in the freezer. And you would buy these popsicles, but they were made out of real fresh fruit. It was delicious. There was nothing else like it that I've ever seen before. Flip that over. Now my lime. Can't have a pico without some lime. Squeeze that guy in there. Oh, my olive oil just fell over. That's what happens when you use your sink as a garbage and you just throw stuff in there. I'll put my other lime in. A little drizzle of olive oil. Some cilantro. Let me rip some cilantro off. And this cilantro can also be cut up and put into a bowl. Some people really like to use fresh cilantro at the end of their taco on top, but I don't mix it in everything because some people have that weird cilantro gene where they think it tastes like soap. I don't have that gene. I think it tastes fresh and delicious. Give this a quick stir. Oh, don't want to forget the nice, generous pinch of salt. So this is my tomato pico. You could bring this up a level by adding some chopped jalapeno. You could add some red chili flakes to it. You could add some pepper to it, but I really like it just simple with salt, lime. Let me get that in front here and flip my tortilla over. Yum, yum, yum. I think I'm going to build a quick taco right in front of you. Get this guy in here. Now my tortilla is nice and soft. This is a little bit more kind of hard. If I folded it in half, it might crumble because it's not heated yet, but this is nice and warm. So we'll put a little bit of guacamole crema on there. Oh, that's a little bit hot. I'm gonna put some pineapple salsa on there. I'm going to use some black beans on there, a few bell peppers and onions, a little bit of quinoa. And I'm going to use this chipotle and adobo sauce. So something that we are missing is some lettuce. So we could shred up some romaine or iceberg to put along with this Mexican taco bar. I can't resist. Thank you for joining me for my Mexican fiesta. We'll see you next time. Wasn't it simple?